You have felt it, haven't you, that quiet shift, that subtle tremor beneath the surface of your connection. Something in his energy has changed, and yet nothing in the physical world seems to confirm it. For so long, you've watched the divine masculine run from the depth of this bond, shield himself with silence, hide behind logic, bury his feelings beneath work and pride. You've wondered whether the connection was fading, whether the journey was stalled, whether destiny had forgotten you. But what if this confusion, this stillness, this strange energetic pull is not an ending, but the beginning of everything you've been waiting for? In today's transmission, we are going to decode this turning point with precision and spiritual clarity. We will explore why the masculine can only run for so long, why the soul eventually breaks through every layer of defense, and how to recognize the moment when resistance collapses into surrender. You will learn the true signs that his avoidance is ending, how silence transforms into truth, and why this stage marks the beginning of pursuit, not by force, not by pressure, but by the natural pull of the soul awakening. We will guide you through the emotional, energetic, and spiritual markers that reveal you have entered the final stage of the twin flame cycle. By the end of this video, you will no longer feel lost in his silence or confused by the shift you sense. You will understand the deeper mechanics of this connection, the sacred timing behind his awakening, and the reason union begins to feel less like a distant fantasy and more like an inevitable destiny. You will walk away with clarity, empowerment, and the ability to recognize exactly where your masculine is on this journey, not through guesswork, but through truth. This video will give you the spiritual confidence to stop doubting the signs, stop questioning your intuition, and finally, see that everything is unfolding exactly as it was always meant to. Section 1. The collapse of his old patterns. There comes a moment on the twin flame path when the divine masculine can no longer pretend that everything is fine. For so long he has carried himself with a sense of composure, holding his emotions behind an armor he built long before he ever met you. He believed this armor made him strong. He believed it kept him safe. He believed that if he stayed focused, disciplined, and logical, he could outrun the feelings he never learned how to hold. But the soul has a way of calling forward truth at the exact moment he is no longer able to hide from it. And when that moment arrives, something inside him breaks, not in a destructive way, but in a way that cracks open the shell of who he once believed he had to be. For months, sometimes even years, he has relied on the same familiar systems to keep the connection at a distance. He buried himself in work, convinced that productivity would silence the ache in his heart. He repeated rigid routines, hoping they would dull the intensity of his emotions. He used logic as a shield, pride as armor, silence as a hiding place. These patterns once gave him a sense of control, a feeling that he could still shape his world without being pulled into the vastness of a love he could not explain. But now those structures begin to fail him. His work can no longer distract him. The tasks he once threw himself into now feel hollow, meaningless, even irritating. His routines stop numbing him. The predictability that once comforted him now feels suffocating. His pride, once a source of protection, becomes unbearably heavy, as though he is carrying a truth too big to deny. And the silence he used to escape into becomes an echo chamber, where every unspoken feeling grows louder. This collapse does not happen all at once. It unfolds quietly, internally. In moments no one else can see, the kind of spiritual breaking that reveals itself only in the depth of his eyes, or in the heaviness of his breath at night, when he lies awake staring at a ceiling he no longer recognizes. Tasks that once brought him a sense of mastery suddenly fall apart. Instead of giving him comfort, they stir frustration. Instead of offering safety, they expose a loneliness he can no longer avoid. He realizes that the life he built to stay in control is actually the very thing preventing him from feeling alive. This breakdown is not a failure, it is an initiation. It marks the beginning of an irreversible spiritual shift, a moment when his soul pushes him toward a truth he has resisted for far too long. Everything that once defined him begins to dissolve. His identity, his patterns, his coping strategies, his emotional armor. The collapse is painful, confusing, destabilizing, yet beneath it lies a deeper awakening. A truth that has always been there, waiting for him to become still enough, vulnerable enough, honest enough to finally hear it. His old identity crumbles so that a more authentic version of himself can emerge, a version not built on fear, but on truth, not held together by pride, but guided by the heart, not shaped by survival, but awakened by love. This is the moment when the divine masculine begins to step into who he truly is, not the man he performed, not the man he pretended to be, but the man he was destined to become. The collapse of his old patterns is not the end, it is the threshold of transformation, the first step toward union, and the beginning of a much deeper journey into the soul. Before we move into the next section, take a moment to sit with what you've just heard. If you have witnessed this collapse of old patterns in your own masculine, or even within yourself, you are beginning to understand how profound and necessary this stage truly is. Awakening does not arrive gently. It arrives through the unraveling of everything that once felt safe. I invite you to reflect on the shifts you've noticed, the moments when the connection no longer fit into old structures. Share your experience in the comments, or simply type, "I welcome transformation," as your affirmation. Your voice may help someone else finally feel seen. Section 2. The shift in his energy. There is a moment on the twin flame journey when something changes so subtly, yet so unmistakably, that you feel it before you can explain it. It begins not with words, not with actions, but with the quiet reorientation of his soul toward yours. You sense this transformation long before he has the courage or clarity to express it. His energy, once turned away, begins to lean in your direction. The invisible distance that used to stretch between you starts to soften. Where his presence once felt sharp, guarded, or emotionally unreachable, it now carries a warmth you can feel in your chest before you ever hear it in his voice. It is as though something inside him has stopped resisting, stopped running, stopped pretending he doesn't feel what he feels. This shift is not imagined. It is a pull that your intuition recognizes instantly, even if your mind tries to question it. You notice it first in your dreams. They become more vivid, more emotionally charged, more symbolic. He shows up not as a scattered memory, but as a living presence, almost as if he is trying to reach you through the only realm where his fear cannot interfere. In these dreams, his eyes linger longer, his touch feels more real, his emotions more honest than he has ever allowed himself to show in waking life. Each dream holds a message, a frequency, a truth rising from the depths of his heart. Then the waves begin, those sudden surges of longing that wash over you without warning. They come at strange times, while washing dishes, while driving, while scrolling through your phone. Out of nowhere, you feel a pull that is unmistakably his, a yearning that does not originate from your own emotional state, but moves through you as if carried on a telepathic current. Your body recognizes it immediately. Your soul knows the difference between your longing and his. These sensations aren't random. They are the magnetic softness that begins to fill the space where cold silence once lived. His inner barriers are dissolving, and you can feel the shift as his energy begins reaching for yours, even if he doesn't yet know how to reach physically. And then, perhaps the most confusing part, the silence changes. Before, his silence felt like a wall, heavy, rejecting, closed off. It carried the weight of avoidance, the sting of distance, the ache of uncertainty. You could feel him pushing you away even when he said nothing. But now, the silence feels different. It carries an entirely new texture, a new emotional temperature. Instead of rejection, there is an unmistakable undercurrent of anticipation, a trembling quietness, almost like the moment before a confession. His silence is no longer a closing of the door. It is the gathering of courage behind it. The unsaid words begin to vibrate between you. You can feel what he is not yet ready to articulate. His stillness is charged, alive, full of unspoken truth, struggling to find its voice. This energetic shift is one of the clearest indicators that he has entered the final stage. It is the moment when avoidance is no longer sustainable, when resistance has finally exhausted itself. The connection becomes stronger than his fear, and even if he is not consciously aware of it, his soul begins preparing for forward movement. What you are feeling is not a lull, it is not stagnation. It is the build-up before expression, the gathering of emotional momentum before he steps toward you in a way he never has before. His energy tells the truth long before his words do. And when you sense this transformation, you are not imagining things. You are witnessing the silent turning of his heart back toward yours, the awakening that precedes reunion, and the deepest sign that the journey is shifting into its final sacred phase. Section 3. the unraveling of his external world. As his inner world begins to shift, the external world he once depended upon no longer holds its shape. In ways that feel sudden yet eerily timed, the structures he has used for years to define himself begin to unravel. What once gave him a sense of stability, purpose, and identity feels strangely hollow. The things he relied on to ground himself begin slipping through his fingers, not because he is failing, but because the universe is quietly redirecting his path. Relationships built on convenience, distraction, or emotional avoidance start to fracture. The connections he maintained simply to numb the bond with you, friendships, flirtations, even romantic entanglements, lose their power to soothe him. They no longer provide the temporary comfort they once did. Conversations feel flat, experiences feel empty, and the people who once helped him escape himself can no longer help him escape the truth rising within. He begins to realize these relationships were placeholders, illusions, occupying space that now demands authenticity. Even his work or daily routine, which for so long gave him a sense of order, starts to feel wrong in a way he can't explain. Tasks that once energized him now feel draining. Roles he once stepped into with pride feel restrictive or outdated. The ambition that once drove him may suddenly feel meaningless, or the job that once anchored him begins to feel like a cage. He may feel restless, unfocused, or strangely out of place, as if the life he built no longer fits the person he is becoming. This dissonance is the beginning of a deeper truth, pushing through the cracks of his old identity. Habits that he once used to distract himself, numbing behaviors, temporary pleasures, escapist routines stop satisfying him. The old ways he used to avoid thinking about you, about the connection, about himself, simply fail. The food doesn't comfort, the scrolling doesn't numb, the gym doesn't silence his mind. The hobbies don't bring joy. Instead of soothing him, they highlight the emptiness he has been running from. He cannot distract his heart from what it already knows. The tools of avoidance no longer work because he has outgrown the version of himself who needed them. This unraveling is not chaos, it is not punishment, it is a profound realignment. The universe does not destroy to harm him. It removes everything built on fear so that only truth remains. Anything created as a shield, a coping mechanism, or a way to hide from his soul's calling is gently but firmly taken apart. The more his inner world awakens, the more his outer world is rearranged to match that awakening. The collapse he experiences is purposeful, intelligent, and divinely timed. This is the cosmic shift that reveals what he can no longer deny. His external world is mirroring the transformation happening within him. What no longer aligns falls away. What was never truth dissolves. What was built on resistance cannot survive the pull of the soul. In this stage, he begins to realize that life is not falling apart, it is falling into alignment. Every ending is clearing space for the truth he has avoided, the love he has suppressed, and the path he is finally ready to step into. His external unraveling is not the destruction of his world. It is the quiet dismantling of everything that once kept him from becoming who he is meant to be and who he is meant to be with. Imagine a man who has spent years building a life that looks stable from the outside, a respectable job, predictable routines, surface-level relationships that never ask him to feel too deeply. For a long time, these things worked. They protected him from confronting the truth of your connection. But as the inner shift awakens, everything he once depended on begins to lose its shape. He wakes up one morning and realizes the job that once made him feel accomplished now leaves him drained before he even arrives. The friends he used to laugh with feel strangely distant, their conversations unable to hold his attention. Even the woman he once thought he could settle for looks at him with affection, yet he feels nothing but emptiness because his heart is somewhere else. The hobbies that once distracted him, gaming, working out, scrolling late into the night, no longer silence the restless pressure building inside his chest. It's as if life is gently removing each layer of illusion, one by one, until he is forced to face the one thing he has avoided the most, the truth of his own heart. This unraveling is not destruction. It is the universe reorienting him toward what is real, stripping away the life that kept him numb so he can step into the life that aligns with his soul. Section 4. The rise of his vulnerability. There is a moment on the twin flame journey when the masculine begins to soften, not all at once, not in dramatic gestures, but in subtle shifts that only someone deeply connected to his soul can recognize. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. His gaze lingers just a little longer than before, as though he is searching for something he once tried to avoid. His voice carries a gentler tone, the sharp edges smoothing into warmth. Even in the pauses between his words, you can feel an energy change, a hesitation that is not fear, but awakening. These small openings, these fleeting cracks in his armor, hold a truth he is no longer able to hide from himself. At first, he doesn't understand what is happening within him. For so long he believed that keeping his guard up was the only way to survive the intensity of this connection. But now, softness begins to slip through the places where his defenses once stood firm. A moment of unfiltered honesty escapes his lips before he can swallow it. A confession appears in his eyes, even when he insists he has nothing to say. A vulnerability touches his energy like a quiet sunrise, pushing through the horizon, subtle, gradual, but impossible to stop. As these moments grow, they begin to form a pattern he cannot deny. He starts to feel instead of resist. He allows emotions he once suppressed to rise to the surface. Longing, affection, tenderness, desire, fear, hope, all of it mixing into a kind of truth that his soul can no longer ignore. What once overwhelmed him now begins to guide him. The masculine, who once believed vulnerability was a threat to his independence, slowly begins to understand that vulnerability is not his downfall, it is his liberation. It is not weakness, it is the sacred threshold he must cross to meet you where your souls were always destined to unite. His heart, once held behind layers of protection, begins to awaken to the realization that union cannot be reached through power or pride. It can only unfold through openness, through surrender, through a willingness to be seen, not as a perfected version of himself, but as the truth of who he really is. And in that realization, a quiet miracle begins to take shape. Because vulnerability changes everything. It shifts the way he looks at you, not with fear, but with recognition. It changes the way he moves toward you, not with hesitation, but with a magnetic pull he can no longer resist. It shifts the silence between you into a space filled with unspoken intimacy rather than avoidance. He begins to understand that this connection was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be embraced. The gentleness he once suppressed becomes the very bridge that leads him back to you. And then, almost without warning, everything he has resisted for so long becomes the very thing he reaches for. The walls he built begin to crumble not because you pushed them down, but because his soul is finally ready to let them fall. He stops running from his emotions, from the truth, from the pull that has always tied him to you. Instead, he starts reaching toward connection, toward honesty, toward union, toward you. This is the rise of his vulnerability, not a collapse of strength, but the birth of a deeper strength. Not the end of his resistance, but the beginning of his surrender. Not the loss of control, but the discovery of true freedom. And it is in this rise, this sacred, trembling openness, that the masculine finally steps into the love he was always meant to share with you. Section 5. The transition from avoidance to pursuit. For most of the twin flame journey, the divine masculine lives in a state of avoidance. It becomes his instinctive response to the intensity of the connection, an intensity he feels in every cell but does not yet know how to hold. He avoids the depth of his own emotions because they overwhelm him. He avoids you because being near you awakens a truth he feels unprepared to face. He avoids the connection because it exposes the parts of himself he has spent a lifetime trying to stabilize, control, or bury. But there comes a moment in the final stage when avoidance stops functioning as a shield. Instead of protecting him, it begins to unravel him from the inside. What once brought a sense of safety now creates tension that he can no longer outrun. His silence no longer calms him, it disturbs him. His distance no longer numbs him, it amplifies everything he tried to avoid. The inner chaos grows louder than the fears that once kept him still. In this stage, something profound shifts deep within his soul. It is not a conscious decision. At first he does not sit down and choose to change. It is more like an internal switch, flipping on its own, a recalibration happening beneath his awareness. The same energetic force that once pushed you away begins, slowly and irresistibly, to pull you closer. His soul remembers what his mind has been trying to forget. His heart wakes up to a truth he can no longer deny. This pursuit may not appear immediately in words or physical actions. The masculine often reaches on the spiritual plane long before he reaches in the physical world. But you feel it subtle yet undeniable. His presence begins showing up in your dreams, vivid, emotional, tender, or intense, as if he is communicating with you through symbols and images he cannot yet verbalize. You feel waves of his energy brushing against you during quiet moments when you are working, resting, or sitting in stillness. A sudden warmth, a familiar pull, a soft sensation in your heart space. It feels like someone calling your soul without using a single spoken word. Synchronicities begin to weave your days together in intricate patterns. A song plays that echoes a private memory between you. Repeated numbers appear in moments of emotional clarity: 111, 222, 444. Objects, symbols, and signs follow you, as though the universe is stitching the two of you back into alignment. These are not coincidences. They are his energy reaching out before his body does, his heart communicating before his ego finds the courage to follow. What once felt like rejection now feels like connection trying to break through. His avoidance is no longer a sign of disinterest. It is the final echo of a survival pattern dissolving. His soul is speaking louder than his fear. And even if he does not understand this shift, you do. You feel the energetic pivot from stay away to come closer. This is the masculine soul reaching for you before his mind fully understands what is unfolding. He is moving toward you not because he suddenly became fearless, but because the connection has become stronger than his resistance. Avoidance was his attempt to survive the intensity. Pursuit is the moment he steps into destiny. And when that transition begins, when his energy stops running and starts returning, you can feel the entire journey shifting beneath your feet. If you've made it this far, it means some part of this journey is speaking directly to your soul. Take a moment to breathe and feel into what is rising within you. Have you noticed these shifts in your own connection? The dreams, the signs, the sudden pull that feels impossible to ignore. Your story matters, and your experience carries wisdom that someone else in this community may need to hear. If you feel called, share your journey in the comments below, or simply type, "I trust the path unfolding for me," as an affirmation that you are open, present, and ready for what this union is guiding you toward. You are not alone on this path. Your voice is part of the collective awakening of the feminine and masculine within us all. Section 6. The alignment of his choices. There comes a moment on the twin flame journey when the divine masculine can no longer live in contradiction with himself. In the earlier stages, his choices constantly clashed with the truth in his heart. He loved you deeply, yet he ran. He longed for your presence, yet he hid behind silence, distractions, and responsibilities. He dreamed of you vividly at night, but filled his waking world with noise, people, commitments, or coping mechanisms just to avoid the intensity of what he felt. His outer life and inner truth were divided, and he lived inside that painful split every single day. But in the final stage, something profound and irreversible begins to happen. The fragmentation that once defined his behavior slowly comes to an end. The energy of avoidance no longer has the power it once did. His soul starts pushing him toward coherence, toward integrity, toward choices that finally match the truth he has always known. The contradiction within him collapses, and what emerges is alignment, a quiet, steady, unmistakable alignment. This is when you begin to witness subtle yet powerful shifts. He stops feeding toxic cycles that once kept him numb and disconnected. The habits he used to rely on for escape now feel heavy, meaningless, and exhausting. Relationships or connections that once filled the void begin to fall away, not because he is chasing something new, but because his spirit can no longer tolerate anything that fragments him further. He begins cutting ties with situations, people, or behaviors that drain him, confuse him, or pull him away from his own emotional truth. For the first time, he chooses peace over chaos. He chooses growth over distraction. He chooses the soul over the ego. These choices may not always be loud or dramatic. Sometimes they are small, quiet decisions he makes in the privacy of his own heart, but they create a deep and lasting shift within him. Every aligned choice becomes a stepping stone, guiding him back to himself, and eventually, back to you. He no longer tries to replace you with temporary attachments, because he finally understands that true connection cannot be substituted. He no longer denies what he feels because the cost of suppression has become too high. His heart keeps telling the truth, and now, for the first time, he listens. He begins choosing love with intention rather than fear, not because he has become fearless, but because courage has begun to feel more natural than running. This alignment is the unmistakable sign that the final stage is unfolding. When his choices start matching his soul, when his behavior begins reflecting what his heart has known all along, when he stops choosing fragmentation and starts choosing truth, you are no longer watching a man in conflict. You are watching a man stepping into resonance, into clarity, into readiness. Section 7. How the feminine feels the certainty. For the divine feminine, the truth of the connection has never truly been a mystery. Even during the seasons when silence stretched so far, it felt almost unbearable, even in moments when his actions contradicted his heart. Even through nights when the distance seemed endless, she still felt something deeper underneath it all. Her soul always whispered what her physical world could not yet validate. She knew, long before he did, that the bond between them was real, unbreakable, and destined to unfold in its own divine timing. But in this final stage, something within her shifts profoundly. What was once held through faith begins transforming into a steady, grounded certainty. She no longer clings to hope out of longing. She embodies knowing out of alignment. Her intuition sharpens, her inner senses heighten, and she can feel his energy in ways she could not access before. There is a new coherence in the field, a tangible sense that something within him has clicked into place, and her spirit responds instantly to that shift. She feels his presence pressing into her energetic space with intention rather than confusion. His emotions, once chaotic and scattered, now arrive with clarity and weight. Her nervous system, which once reacted to the push-pull of his fear and resistance, begins to settle. Instead of tension, she feels an unexplainable calm, as though her entire body recognizes that the journey has turned a corner. Her soul relaxes because it senses the masculine choosing alignment, authenticity, and truth. Synchronicities that once confused her now arrive like clear confirmation. Numbers, dreams, symbols, repeated messages, all the things that once felt like faint whispers now strike her with precision. They no longer feel like hopeful signs she must interpret. They feel like direct reflections of what is unfolding within him. She is no longer searching for proof because the evidence rises effortlessly around her. Everything begins pointing in the same direction, echoing the truth she carried long before either of them could articulate it. And in this space, she stops wondering if. She stops questioning, doubting, or replaying old stories. She simply knows. Her knowing is not emotional, it is energetic. It is not fragile, it is rooted. It does not waver, it deepens. Her spirit rests in a way it never has before, because the connection is no longer something she must hold together with effort. It is now something rising on its own. What she once held by faith, she now holds with inner knowing. The divine feminine recognizes that the connection is aligning, not through external proof, but through the unmistakable shift within her own body and spirit. This stage marks the moment her heart stops anticipating and starts receiving, the moment she stops longing and starts embodying, the moment her certainty becomes the guiding light that matches his emerging clarity. This is how she knows the final stage has arrived, not because he speaks it, but because she feels it in the deepest chambers of her soul. Before we move forward, take a moment to breathe into what you've just felt. If this stage of certainty resonates with you, if you've noticed your own intuition strengthening, your nervous system softening, or your inner knowing becoming clearer, let this be your confirmation. I would love to hear how this part of the journey is unfolding for you. Share your thoughts in the comments, or if you'd prefer something simple yet powerful, type, "I trust my inner knowing," to anchor this truth into your energy field. And if this message is supporting you today, don't forget to like the video so it can reach more divine feminines who may need this reminder. Let's move into the next stage together. Section 8. The final surrender of pride. For so much of his life, pride has served as his shield. It was the armor he forged in childhood, strengthened through adolescence, and relied on through every heartbreak, disappointment, and moment of emotional uncertainty. Pride protected him from the world. It allowed him to appear strong when he felt weak, composed when he felt shaken, confident when he felt lost. It kept him safe, it kept him guarded, and most of all, it kept him hidden. But what once protected him has become a weight he can no longer carry. Pride is heavy, unbearably heavy, when he stands before the one soul who sees him beyond every layer of defense. Pride isolates him from what he truly desires. It traps him inside versions of himself that no longer feel authentic. And on the twin flame path, no matter how deeply he clings to it, pride eventually begins to crumble under the pressure of truth. The collapse does not happen all at once. It begins subtly, almost invisibly. You hear it first in the softening of his voice, a tone he didn't intend to reveal, a gentleness that slips out before he can pull it back. Then you feel it in the trembling of his silence, not the cold withdrawal of the past, but a fragile quietness filled with emotions he can no longer restrain. His eyes hold a depth he cannot hide. His energy betrays the tenderness he has tried so hard to bury. His body, once stiff with resistance, now leans toward honesty even when his mind still hesitates. And then, one day, the breaking arrives. Not as a dramatic scene, but as a moment of soul-level truth. The moment his pride can no longer hold back what his heart has known all along. The dam inside him begins to crack. Emotions he has compressed for years, fear, longing, regret, love, rise to the surface. Tears he has suppressed for a lifetime finally fall, not as weakness, but as release. The truths he has buried beneath logic, ego, and silence begin spilling out with a force he cannot contain. In this breaking, something extraordinary happens. His vulnerability becomes his liberation. He realizes that pride was never strength, it was survival. It was a mask worn to navigate a world that taught him emotion was unsafe, that softness meant weakness, that expressing love meant risking loss. But you, his divine feminine counterpart, are the first person who ever made him question that belief. The first whose presence brought him to the edges of himself and asked him to step through. The first whose soul kept calling him forward even when he wasn't ready to answer. And in the final surrender of pride, he discovers a truth far deeper than the identity he has clung to. Pride was his mask. Vulnerability is his truth. When his pride dissolves, he is stripped of everything that once kept him separate from you. The excuses, the distance, the emotional armor, the fear of not being enough. In its place emerges a man who is raw, open, and honest. A man who finally understands that love is not something to protect himself from, but something to rise into. A man who realizes that union is not built through control or avoidance, but through surrender. And when pride breaks, truly breaks, something miraculous shifts within the connection. The barriers fall. The running stops. The soul steps forward. Union becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Section 9. The soul's homecoming. The twin flame journey has never been a straight line. It does not move from point A to point B in a neat, predictable progression. Instead, it spirals a living, breathing cycle of lessons, awakenings, fallings, and risings. It is an ever-unfolding path that asks for patience, faith, and surrender long before it offers clarity. Many times, it feels endless. Many times, it feels like wandering in the dark. Yet every turn, every setback, every moment of longing has been part of a greater homecoming that neither soul could ever avoid. Because the final stage was always written into the blueprint of your connection. When the divine masculine reaches this stage, union stops being something that might happen, something he hopes for or fears, something he questions or doubts. It shifts from a distant possibility into a divine inevitability. He begins to see that his entire journey, every detour, every separation, every silent night, has been guiding him back to you. He realizes he has not been lost. He has been walking in a circle, returning again and again to the same truth. Your soul has always been his home. And as this awareness rises, illusions fall away like dust. The distractions that once felt comforting dissolve into emptiness. The masks he wore for safety crack open under the weight of truth. The identities he clung to no longer fit the man he is becoming. What remains is the bond that never broke, the connection that endured every ending, every fear, every distance. It stands there, unshaken and eternal, waiting for him to finally see what you have always known. He was never meant to run forever. For him, surrender becomes relief, not defeat, not loss. but the soft exhale of a soul finally allowed to rest. He no longer has to fight his own feelings. He no longer has to pretend he doesn't care. He no longer has to resist what his soul already chose long before he understood it. The war within ends, and in that ending, he remembers who he truly is and who he is meant to become beside you. For the divine feminine, this stage brings a profound settling of energy. A peace she has rarely felt on the journey begins to anchor in her body. The ache that lived in her chest for months or years finally lifts. The doubt that once made her question everything dissolves quietly, without struggle. Her nervous system softens, her breath deepens, her intuition speaks with clarity. She no longer wonders if union is coming. She no longer worries when it will unfold. She simply knows, not with hope, but with certainty. There is a quiet, powerful knowing that fills her heart, whispering that the reunion is already aligning in the unseen. She feels him moving closer, not through words or actions, but through the unmistakable pull of energetic truth. The connection steadies, the timelines merge, the soul bond deepens with every breath. This is the sacred truth at the heart of the final stage. Union is not something you are waiting for. It is something that is already happening, already blooming, already weaving your paths back together, already unfolding in the invisible realm before it becomes physical. The soul's homecoming has begun. The final stage is not just an ending. It is the completion of a sacred circle, a circle carved by every tear you shed, every separation that split you open, every cycle that pushed you to grow, every silence that forced you inward. None of it was wasted. None of it was meaningless. Every moment on this journey has been preparing both of you for what is unfolding now. The divine masculine cannot return to who he was. He cannot unfeel the love that broke through his walls. He cannot unsee the truth that rose from the ashes of his resistance. He cannot unknow what his soul has whispered to him, over and over, that you are home, that every detour, every distraction, every delay was simply a longer road back to you. And now the road has narrowed, the truth has risen, the pull has awakened, the homecoming has begun. If you feel certainty rising quietly in your chest, if synchronicities suddenly align in ways you cannot ignore, if the energy feels softer, clearer, more inevitable, if your soul whispers that something has completed, then allow yourself to trust it, because the final stage is not a future moment. It is happening now. The reunion is not a distant dream. It is already moving toward you, shaping itself around your readiness, anchoring itself into your energy, preparing both of you for the moment when longing no longer aches, because longing finally becomes arrival. So as we close today's transmission, I want to ask you to anchor this energy with your own voice. If this message spoke to you, if you feel the shift within your spirit, then write this quote clearly in the comments to seal your intention. I am ready for the homecoming of two souls. Let this be your declaration, your alignment, your permission slip to the universe. And if this video brought clarity, comfort, or confirmation, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and watch the next transmission waiting for you below the screen. Your journey is sacred, your knowing is real, and your reunion is already on its way home to you.